digital learning infrastructure looks like, but it's also to make sure that that's centered around the specific co-design needs of HBCUs. So let me just kind of give you a quick transition to where we're going to be going next. And Melanie will provide you with more of that context. You know, we've spent a lot of time talking about the challenges that are in front of us, things that have worked well. I think the next phase for us in this conversation is really starting to put some meat on the bones around what is it that we need. When we talk about digital learning, we know that digital learning overwhelmingly tends to focus on what the online course experience is. But the way that we've been talking about digital learning is how do digital tools, how do services, how do trainings, how do all these processes align with our student success agenda? So that could be everything from helping students identify a sense of purpose on the front end, which could be, how do they choose the majors on, and make sure that they're on a right. What do the structures look like? So how do we use technology to ensure that students understand a clear semester by semester map of where they're going? How do we ensure that academically, as well as through the student success work, that we're thinking about how we ensure momentum and make that process more efficient for our institutions? And then we've heard a lot of individuals talking about, my students need this unique type of support, or we do something very special at HBCUs. Well, what does that look like in a virtual space? What does that look like? What kind of tools will allow us to provide services and guidance to students to ensure that those will ultimately be able to connect with the work that we're doing. So the pivot for us, with all that being said, is around specificity related to what do we need? How are those things integrated? What tools would help us move from where the ball is to where the ball is going? That's the focus for this time, this conversation that we have today. And as we move forward, some of the focus group sessions that will include some institutions that are trying to make some decisions about how they use the sub-grants to advance their work. So that's just the kind of the firm framing. Melanie, tell me if I missed anything. I also have my colleagues from the Southern Center for Broadening Participation in STEM. Please let me know if I missed anything on that end, Melanie, Calvin, or Samantha.
No, I think you got it. I do want to give a small caveat that Danifu and I are traveling right now. We're on the road onboarding South Carolina into the Alliance. So if our internet is a little glitchy, we apologize. Just let us know if you can't hear us fully. So I'm going to go through a few quick administrative updates because I know you all are anxious and have been emailing, asking questions. And so I wanted to share that up front, and then we'll just dig into the topics for today. So what you should see on your screen, we will be coming to you in person. These are the dates that the project leads have committed to interact us being with you. Please message me if you have any concerns, if anything has changed about your dates. And then on the right-hand side, you can see a schedule for the visit. So we will be doing some meetings with the project team, your key stakeholders on campus. Some of us will be meeting with your presidents, provost, leadership on your campuses. We'll have a very small presentation where you can invite other stakeholders on campus. We understand that this group we asked you to identify 5 to 7 people, but of course there's so many more people on your campuses informing your digital learning infrastructure. So they are more than welcome to attend the session, Digital Learning and Institutional Transformation. We will do 2 focus groups, and I'll be sharing more information with you soon about who should be where and what time and signing up. And then we'll close out the day with just touching base with the project lead and any leadership that we might have missed in the morning. So these are the dates, these are the times. Everyone said they wanted us to be there in the morning, so we'll be there in the mornings. And please let me know if you have any questions. Again, more information coming soon, but just wanted to share this. And then for the much anticipated HBCU DLI convening, that is scheduled for April 21st through the 22nd in Atlanta, Georgia. We'll be sharing the registration, the dates, the location, all of that information in the next week. But just wanted you to hold these dates on your calendar. We'll be contacting you about travel and those logistics as well. Any questions? Danifu, did I miss anything?
No, you didn't, but if I could just add a little bit of texture on this slide that you have up. We, just as a reminder, this was the event that was supposed to take place at the beginning of March. So, due to the fact that, a lot of institutions had some unique circumstances around the start of school, COVID protocols, everything else, we decided to give ourselves a little bit more time. So this was based on your request. With that being said, time is extremely sensitive. And so we wanted to get you the dates as quickly as possible. The next move for us, as soon as you start getting information from Melanie, we are going to really need everyone to push getting their travel confirmed ASAP, so we can be respectful of the dollars, that are helping to fund this, get reduced plane tickets, and then also make sure that we have a clear understanding of the number of individuals that will be attending. So just want to keep that in mind. So as soon as you get those emails, please, we'll be sending you a lot of reminders so we can quickly get a good count. So we'll be ready to see you all in person in Atlanta.
Thanks. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. We hosted a webinar last Tuesday. All the days run together still, but I think it was last Tuesday on our pillars for student success. So hopefully you were able to catch it. If not, I'll drop the link in the chat box. But I want to turn it over to Dr. Elson to kind of frame the strategies, and then I will talk you through the activity that we'll all do together.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And this is not an exhaustive list of all the things that we're working on at our campuses to make sure that, students are successful and ultimately graduate. For some of you who have been, and many of you, one of the reasons why you were chosen is because you are more often than not in a Complete College America Alliance state and have already started working on, or at least have a strong commitment to advancing many of these student success strategies. Across every single one of these pillars, there is a digital learning infrastructure, technological solution component to them. And we know what some of those are, but really we're trying to find out what's the connection between each of these and this larger conversation around digital culture. So I think I started kind of talking about this a little bit. When we say purpose, what we're talking about is how do you align the college experience with a student's goals. So students, many times, especially first generation college students, and even those who come from very, affluent backgrounds, because we know that there's not a monolith at HBCUs, but you can't, individuals are always trying to make decisions about where they want to go. And we know that technology can be a tool to advance that, because every career counselor can't have ongoing 2 and 3 hour sessions with their students, and so those are the pieces around purpose. Around structure, I mentioned that a little earlier. It's just making sure that we have a clearly aligned kind of roadmap. And there are a lot of things that students need just to kind of see that, even in some of the focus group conversations and early interviews conducted by Drs. Calvin Briggs and Dr. Samantha Briggs, a big conversation piece around students saying they found value in being able to see things virtually around how they're progressing and have they met their course needs around a course map. So that's what we're talking about in structure. Momentum is really, how do we do this in an expedited way? And so those are some strategies associated with it. And then last but not least, as I mentioned a little earlier, the support pillar is just the reality that we have to have guardrails. And so, we've had conversations in our advisory group with people saying, my students are trying to figure out how they get access to Wi-Fi, and they feel disengaged from their classmates, and that's why they chose an HBCU. So what does that support look like? How do we ensure that the academic advising environment, the student support environment, all aligns? So I think for every single one of these, what we're also trying to figure out is where's the integration? Where's the technological integration? Because another conversation that we've heard is everyone's like, we've got all these different tools, none of them talk together. So we'd love to know your thoughts and your thinking around, if I could dream big and be king or queen for a day, this is what I would want it to look like. This is what I would want to have it. This is how I want it to be integrated. And this is what it would take for my institution to move to that direction. So Melanie, that's the quick overview of how we're thinking about designing with the student experience in mind.
Perfect. Thank you. So we're going to open up breakout rooms by pillar. So I can go back so you can see the strategies in just a second, but you'll select a breakout room based on either your area of expertise or the pillar that you could inform the most. And so we want you, and I'll drop the prompt in the chat. I can't find my cursor on my screen, but the prompt is thinking of how you've defined student success specifically for the pillar. How could digital learning be used to support it? So what are those recommended technologies? How is technology supporting or maybe even hindering the strategy? What should we keep in mind as we dive into this work based on those 4 pillars? So we will be using a Miro board to do so, and I'll open up the rooms in a second, but I do see that there's a question. Someone has their hand raised. Abe, I believe that's you.
Yes, excuse me. I know you want to break up us, in a group, but I want to be clear about this. Dr. Eston mentioned of digital learning and the outcome for a student, which outcome for a student is degree, the program. Therefore, what a student want to get out of, what's their outcome, final goal. And then that's direct us to program outcome, to course outcome. Am I clear about that? That's what we are going to look at, courses outcome. What is the end result for each student in the course, in the program? And then we look at how a student are successful in your pillar to support a student to get there. Is that what we are looking at?
I would say, Dr. Satani, I would say it's yes. I think that sometimes there's this huge chasm between the classroom experience and all the rest of the student success activities. And for us, I think what we're talking about is that there's clear integration. So, and it's customized depending on institutional type. So when we're talking academic advising for campuses that the faculty are the academic advisors, what they need might be different than an institution where they have an academic advising unit where the handoff takes place. So in each of those 2 situations, those would be very different kinds of technology needs. I don't think that we can have this conversation without thinking about what students are learning, recognizing that we're probably taking a little bit of a broader view of learning, beyond what grade you get in a course, but what are the associated skill sets that make you successful in the classroom. So if you're having problems with, with Wi-Fi access or, any personal needs, mental health issues, that's going to affect your performance in the classroom. How does that transition from you as a professor to the individual who is supposed to help that student kind of work through some of those challenges and provide them with different levels of guidance? So I don't know if I answered your question, but I would say it's probably a both and.
Okay, it's a combination of. Thank you.
Agreed.
Perfect. Any other questions before we open the breakout rooms? We will ask that someone takes notes. So whoever's most familiar with Miro or remembers using it last time, you could share your screen in the breakout rooms and post-it note, or anyone in your group can share it. I've dropped the link to the Miro board in the chat, along with a link to our website that has our pillars and strategies on it, should you need a more detailed description. And the prompt is also in the chat for you. We ask that while you're in your rooms, you'll be there for about 10 minutes. If you could identify someone to report out when we get back to the room. We want this time to be self-guided for you all to talk amongst one another. And so our team will be bouncing around from room to room. If you need me or have any questions, you'll see the need help button at the bottom of your screen. I can bounce over to you right away.
Melanie, just can you you framed it at the front end, but just one more time. So
Yeah.
before we break out, tell me exactly, people have the mural board, they're going to decide on the pillar that they feel most connected with. And what's the big takeaway that we want them to?
So you'll be thinking of how you define student success. We did this activity last time, defining student success, student engagement, and what that means in a digital space. How could digital learning be used to support this pillar? So what technology should be used? What should be integrated into the strategies that fall under each pillar? And so at the bottom of your screen, you should see an option to select a breakout room. If you do not see it, then I'll ask you to wait just a second to let people start bouncing over. You might have to click the more button to the left in the red button to open it up, and you can hop to whatever room you want, or you can tell me where you need to go. So if we could get a quick report out, like 2 minutes max from each group. I know there's lots to talk about. We could probably lead an 1.5-hour session on each of the pillars and really digging into those strategies. So and I'll share my screen so that you can see your notes. So let's start off with the purpose group first. Purpose includes our first year experience, career exploration, academic and career alignment, and adult learner engagement strategies. So a spokesperson from that group, please.
Can I nominate someone?
Sure.
Dion.
Voluntold.
That's why we were voluntold. Okay, well, I will start at the top in terms of on my campus, and I would say that I'm very guilty that we have a tool, a workforce analytics tool called Occupation Insights, and we had that limited to a couple of our professional programs, business, nursing, and another program I can't think of what it was. But after the webinar last week, and looking at how that workforce analytics should be deeper embedded earlier in the student experience, it really opened my eyes. I'm like, okay, we need to expand this to career services, FYE, and the workforce analytics program shows them how it aligns to their degree and all that kind of good stuff. So for as COPN, I think we need to do a better job with that. Also for learner engagement, that for adult learner engagement, that we offer, having virtual options for like bookings, using Microsoft Bookings to book appointments, having Microsoft Teams so they don't have to step on campus, to make that available. I think this was Abigail that mentioned about EAB, and in terms of using that system. And Abigail, do you want to talk about that? Because you did very well speaking about that.
I can. And so we've been discussing getting EAB, which for us would be a great tool, because I've been, I guess, the one who've been complaining the most about, we have systems all over the place, but they're not talking to each other. And our students are running from office to office, but it seems as though EAB Navigate kind of centralizes the information so that when advisors are talking to students, they have some information about, the basic academics. We have information about financial aid. And it also has an engagement tool that when students go from various meetings or things on campus, they can just swipe their ID cards and you have a record of who's gone to what. So on the back end, when you want to use it for predictive analytics, you'll have some information. And it also has an app. And we know that our students are not very responsive to emails, nor are we that much anymore. So we need another way to get information to them. And texting is not necessarily it, as they change their numbers so much, but they're used to using apps. And so this also has an app platform which allows for this engagement. And I think that's one of the things that we've been missing quite a bit on our campus.
Thank you. If anyone wants to add anything to the pillar, even if you weren't in that breakout room, feel free to shout it out or add it to the mural board. The link is still active, so you can add Post-it notes wherever you would like. Thank you. Next up is structure. Dr. Briggs is voluntold somebody.
I guess he's not here, so I'll go. So with our group, so the main thing we talked about was the challenges that HBCUs have with math students and STEM courses in general, that there are barriers to minority student success because the math courses tend to function as gate blockers instead of sort of prerequisites. And so one way we looked at more structure in terms of curriculum, which is limiting students' choices, but then also having a curriculum that is more related to the workforce. So maybe instead of taking college algebra or making algebra the gatekeeping course, they could take technical math. Then and accreditation is always an issue. And we looked at the potential, that's me, I couldn't fix, my space bar wasn't working. The potential for open educational resources. So for the first time, I think in the history of digital education, digital learning, we have the potential to have free and open source math textbook so that the cost of learning material is no longer a barrier, but instead having them distance education ready and having teachers fully trained to teach students in distance education would be some of the digital implication. And the very last one, the sticky note, is also me talking about stackable credentials. Stackable credentials is related to the academic math and pathways as well. And to have stackable credentials and certifications, you would essentially have to coordinate with both K-12, CTE, or VOTEC, and community colleges.
So, Teresa?
Yes.
I will challenge, having been a math teacher at the secondary, post-secondary levels, graduate school, I would challenge you, even for this, in terms of curriculum. We know the curriculum, creating pathways into different career pathways, is a challenge. And we know institutions that are grappling with this problem from K-12 through K-20. So my question to you is, have you seen a tool? Have you seen a resource or a software, some adaptive learning system that may help with a student's transition into their degree courses? For instance, we know algebra is like the course you have to get through just about for every single major. Have you seen any type of adaptive learning systems that will allow students to do like a co-requisite kind of course model where they're taking, maybe if they had to take pre-algebra and take pre-algebra and algebra at the same time and get through those courses together and be more successful, that we could probably use as a tool or a resource?
Well, so with that, the tool is the learning management system itself. But it's really about the content and having faculty that's competent in both the subject matter area and the technology. So for the reason I brought up technical math is because when we were doing this, I worked on the CTE, on the VOTEC side. And so when we were doing this for VOTEC, every single math course and every single STEM course that we were building to sort of try to integrate STEM and academic courses for Mississippi included those components that you are asking about. And it was largely built by a math teacher, and I functioned as the expert in digital education. So it's not necessarily the material or even the app. It's having the right people in the right rooms at the same time to develop it on the front end.
So my comment to that would be, I encourage you to include that in the mirror board in the notes so we could capture that. And I'll be very interested in find out who some of those individuals were and what were some of the tools they came up with, and we can use it later.
Well, and Dr. Briggs, you said something that I do want to kind of challenge you on, because it's been a core tenet of CCA, which is algebra should not necessarily be the singular point of in the gateway mathematics courses. So there are equally rigorous courses such as statistics and quantitative reasoning And so we put every student in college algebra because we've always done it that way. So when we talk math pathways, what we're saying is rigorous courses that connect with the majors, and align with the majors. And so it's not about dumbing down the curriculum in any kind of way, but making sure that we recognize there are other options. So that's one. And I'll just quickly, I know, Melanie, you're moving through, but because it was the structure conversation, we're also having discussions with other, the advisory committee, as well as other key stakeholders. And I think this is a big one for everyone, is that we're trying to figure out how we become more efficient. And we spend a lot of time on tasks like, are students in the right courses? Do students know what they should register for the next course? You know what I'm saying? How do we know that they're teed up for graduation? All of that stuff should easily be done with technical solutions. You know what I'm saying? Our conversation should be deeper around, like, what's the experience like at HBCUs? What challenges are you having? Why do you want to change your major? Not, am I enrolled in English 101 for spring semester? You know what I'm saying? That's an easy kind of red light, green light, and I think that if we're able to have something like that, that could definitely help to make our processes more efficient and spend more time on the things that make our institutions what they are.
And
And there's also a data point. There's a data point that Black kids are most likely to not have an Algebra 2 teacher at their district. So they don't even qualify to take algebra when they get to college. They have to take gateway courses. And I think we have to start with that data point before we can talk about structure here.
And Danifu, absolutely on point, correct. I don't believe every student should take college algebra. As a matter of fact, in the state of Alabama, AIDT, who controls a lot of the CTE courses here, they have pulled together a committee of professionals in industry and across other areas to talk about, what do you need your students or your employees to know? And let's go ahead and take this back to higher ed so that they can modify the curriculum to meet these needs. So that's where I wanted you to go, Teresa. And it sounds like you're in that area already. So that's why I wanted you to kind of flush it out a little bit and add it to the mirror board, because I think that's where we need to go with the math piece.
Melanie,
Yeah.
These conversations, they can go all over the place. So
I
I'm
know.
gonna turn it back over to you to keep us moving.
Okay, next up is the Momentum Group. So whoever the spokesperson is, 2-minute report out, please.
I thought we had some really good conversation about this. We mentioned the fact that, again, we're using some technology that we've had, but we're using it in a space now that allows us to do better academic planning and assessment. Also finding ways to promote and support dual enrollment, even at institutions that may be distant, and promoting and supporting that, and finding ways to bring students to our campus in new and innovative ways. I also wanted to just kind of piggyback a little bit. I know we finished talking about structure, but this idea of identifying best pathways and looking for ways to actually customize that more so to students' needs, I think is critical. And this, in terms of our momentum, helping to create these types of plans will, in my estimation, also assist us in doing so. So, we talk about some opportunities, just the idea of badging and just making sure that students are aware and are planning alongside their advisors to finish and to complete their matriculate in a timely fashion. I think this is where we can best utilize our technology, and I'll let others that were in the group breakout room share.
Thank you, Richard. Anyone else want to chime in before we move to support? Right, support pillar, volunteer.
I'll volunteer.
Thank you, Tammy.
So we had a really good conversation in our group. It was really refreshing to see what the other universities were doing, along with some of the things that we had in common. So one of the things that some of us had in common was the use of EAB Navigate, or a different version of EAB to support students, to communicate with them, to use as part of the early alert system. Additionally, Microsoft Bookings was a tool that's been used to actually have students make appointments. That was something that was implemented during our whole COVID-19 situation at one of the universities. And so it actually has gotten the students in a habit of booking appointments, as opposed to just dropping in for different sessions or different meetings to ask questions, or to obtain some type of support from faculty member and offices as well. The other item, Civitas, and I may need one of my team, my fellow group members to chime in on that. But it was actually, Civitas was a tool that was used to actually measure the engagement as well. And please, team members from support, chime in if I totally worded that wrong, because that's something that we have not used at BSU. And-
I'm sorry,
ahead.
Civitas is a predictive analytic tool. So we use it to not only track engagement such as emails, and we can send email. I can send an email, and I can actually, if I put a link in the email, I can check the open rate, and I can also check the click-through rate. So when we do use it, I could see the average number of times a student has logged on the Blackboard versus what the class average is. So it really is a good predictive analytics tool that we use to see a student success. So if the average number of logins for the class is 59 and the student's only at 35, that would be a conversation we have to have. So it really is a good tool to use, and we've been using it at Coppin for the last, I think, 3 years, and I enjoy it.
Thank you for chiming in on that, Ray. And the last item that we talked about was having centralized support at BSU. We have a system which we refer to as Trojan SOS, and it's actually a small group of faculty and staff that actually provide support to students when contacted. And so there's a Trojan SOS email address, and students are made aware of that when they first start at BSU. And then when we first implemented that tool, the email tool in the group as a whole, there was a big campaign marketing the fact that, hey, if you have issues, whether it be your classes, whether it be personal, technology, contact Trojan SOS. And so we don't necessarily resolve the issues unless there's something that we can just easily resolve with that with them. And I say we because I'm actually part of Trojan SOS, and Ms. Sharon Taylor, who's on the call as well, is actually the lead. But we are really good with referring them to the resources that they need. We've had students who not only needed assistance with their classes, they needed assistance with their mental state, with homelessness, that we were able to help them get to the right folks. And so it's not necessarily a digital tool that we would prefer, but within the idea of digital tools, you need to think about the staffing to support that. And so this is an example of how we've been able to use something simple as a specified email address to actually really support our students and get them to where they need to be. And along with that, there's a stipend that goes to all of the Trojan SOS members to be part of that team as well. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Danifu.
Tammy, can I ask a quick question on that? So in an ideal world, so people have the desire for people to touch somebody, you know what I'm saying, is part of what makes our institutions unique. my question is, do they need to touch everybody? You know what I'm saying? And so like, how do you, like, there's students who really need to talk to somebody, and then there are the students who just have a question. You know what I'm saying? And so have you figured out what makes the most sense? And have you maybe dreamed a little bit around how technology could help you decipher who needs more of a personal touch point?
Yeah, and it's a balancing act, because definitely some of our students who reach out, sometimes they just need just to verify something. And we do a really good job with just looking up that information and verifying it for them. But those who are high touch, where somebody actually needs to sit down and talk with them, or do a wellness check or something like that, we are like on the spot as far as being able to make those connections. And everyone on campus knows that if you get an email from Trojan SOS, or if one of us reaches out to them because of a Trojan SOS issue, they're pretty good about responding pretty quickly. This was something that was put into place at the height of the pandemic in 2020. And so our provost just approved it to be a permanent fixture for VSU. And so as that goes into, as this is the first semester that it's going to be a permanent fixture. And so we need to wrap our heads around how we're going to, I guess, make it more efficient outside of the email. Just having the email address, there may be some tools that we can use that will help even better.
Thank you for adding that clarity. That's helpful.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to keep us rolling. So we're going to do another breakout rooms, 12 minutes this time, random assignment. But what we want you to do is, you've heard us mention, if you were king or queen for the day, what would this look like? So thinking of increasing access, enrollment, retention, and completion rates of Black students at HBCUs by completely reimagining digital learning to be more innovative, more advanced in higher education. So thinking of what would this look like in an ideal role with unlimited resources, unlimited power. If you could make digital learning at HBCUs perfect, what would that look like? I have on the screen for you some of the things that you've shared before about student engagement and student success, so that you can keep that in mind as you're thinking through what this looks like. I also want to say that when we come back to the main room, we'll talk about, we know that it takes resources and support, so we'll dig into that. But right now we're asking that you think big. You think about, if you had a magic wand, what would you do to improve digital learning? If you're already doing in digital learning, not just in the classroom, but across your campus, how do you bring the culture, the heart, the personal connections that are unique to HBCUs along with the classroom experience? What does that look like? Yeah, so that will be our next breakout room. We'll dig into what resources it takes, what support is needed, how do we get there? But we just want you to think as big as possible right now. If you're already doing things on your campus, or you've implemented the great big things, please add them to the Miro board as well, so that we can reach out to you. If you want to put in parentheses, we do this at this institution already, please do so. There are a bunch of Post-it notes already there for you. And so I'm going to drop the link in the chat for you. Stop sharing my screen. Any questions before we open up these breakout rooms? Okay, I believe we're all back. Time flies. 12 minutes is not enough time. But thank you all so much for adding to the board. There are tons of ideas there. I'm not going to share my screen or ask each group to report out. We're just going to dig into discussion. If you want to, you can still add ideas as we're chatting. And if you want to zoom in on any of the Post-it notes, please feel free to do so, because some people typed a whole lot in those little squares, which is great. So I want to turn it over to Dr. Elston to lead us through just the discussion for the remainder of our session, our time here together.
So Melanie, just to make sure, so we're talking about the session that we just came out of?
Yep, and then we have questions about supporting the teams. How do we get to the big ideas that we did? Yes.
Surely. So, you know what, I know there's a million things on the Miro board. So part of this is designed for us to be able to capture key things, but I'd be interested in anyone just kind of saying, this was something I hadn't thought about before, but would make a huge difference. So would love to just maybe, you know, it doesn't have to be the person who said it themselves, but maybe someone who are like, oh, that would be, you know, a direction that would be valuable to us. Just raise your hand and we'd love to hear your thoughts.
So Danny Fu, in our group, we talked about how we recognize that when it comes to technology and the software that is being provided, it's not a one size fits all. So, you know, some of this software may have been created for larger institutions, may have been PWIs, and they may not necessarily be appropriate to some of the challenges or the services that we need here at HBCUs. So one of my colleagues gave it a name, HBCU Analytics. Is that right, Mr. Benson? You're muted. So
Yeah,
that was one of those things, right? Well, we can maybe get a company, since we're spending all this money, to provide a software that's specific for HBCUs and geared toward the fact that we know many of the students that we serve, they come in with deficiencies and a need for academic support.
One thing our group also discussed was accessibility to persons who have disabilities at our university, and many other universities, when we had to go virtual for the pandemic, it was really challenging for our students who were registered with disability support services to be able to keep up with meeting their assignment requirements or being able to learn depending on their disability and not having that access to their coaches that they may have had face-to-face and that interaction. And also finding that when they had issues as it related to IT, particularly if they were blind or deaf and hard of hearing, and they needed technical support, having that individual who is trained to be able to provide them with that technical support in order for them to be effective and continuing in their program. We also talked about an app designed for students by students to assist them with engaging with the campus and the administration. That is something that several of the individuals in our group, they said that they have heard feedback from their students for requesting something like that and being able to get that implemented. Someone also recommended that we have an app to communicate with the parents because they receive a lot of calls from parents in reference to various things. And so if they could have an app to be able to interact with the parents or respond to parents or even put out blanket notices to parents, that would be great. Also implementing virtual reality in the classroom. That is something that we do at Coppin State. And I do integrate that into my counseling courses for students to be able to experience what it's just like in the day of a life for a person who may have a mental health disorder, depending on the disorder. And that experience has been great. We do have to take them to a lab for them to do that. So that is set up in a different room. With the way technology is going, you've been hearing a lot about metaverse and different alternate realities that are being established and that will be impacting education in the very near future. I do find that our classrooms are not conducive to that shift, or it is not in many instances friendly as it relates to the design and setup of the classroom in order to be able to perhaps implement virtual reality in the room, because your students may want to wear their headsets and walk around the classroom. And so you have to make sure they're in a controlled environment. So if I had unlimited funds, I would not only have the equipment and the buy the software and get the personnel that we need to be able to train faculty on how to design these courses, but also do a restructure of how the classroom is set up.
Sabrina,
Yes. So,
that was a lot, and I hope you wrote some of that down in those notes.
oh, I have it all written down.
Thank you.
It was a lot.
Other folks, big ideas that resonated.
Faculty and student need training for effective technology use. What we are doing is not, to me, is not effective. It's because of limited faculty attendance or not enough provided to a student.
I think that hi, this is Sanithia. I think that in our group, I think one of the big takeaways to me was that, and Dr. Briggs, correct me if I'm off board with this, but I think one of the big takeaways that came out was that that if we had a reservoir of unlimited funds, that we might explore approaching some of these technology vendors and providing them with the particulars to design the type of system that we need for HBCUs. For instance, we may look at some of that we talked about, looking at some of the tools that are out there, looking from an outcomes perspective at those tools that have produced the greatest number of graduations, time to degree completers, that have reduced attrition, that have maintained persistence over the 4 years within the universities. What are those types of technologies that are working at our institutions? And then take those best practices and leverage up on them. But one of the things that we said, and one of the things that I came out of some of my research, is that most of the technology that we're using on these campuses, we're purchasing. And so that goes back to us developing our own technologies that will speak to our own needs. And then training, using our students in our classrooms. I think someone said that using our computer tech classes, our students can design some of the programming. And so that would be a wish that would certainly help to tell the HBCU story in a little bit better way using technology.
You know, we're starting behind the scenes. We've got a team of folks capturing these consistent themes. So I'm starting to hear some of the same things that we've heard in the advisory group and with other stakeholders. So thank you all for sharing. You know, we've only got a couple minutes left, and I'm going to ask I'm going to see if I can squeeze in two things real quick. So one is some of you have asked questions around, we need a little bit of assistance on how we should spend these dollars in the sub-grant. So that is coming. There's more details that you'll be getting around some specific conversations on that. And some of you have said, I already know what we're about to do with this. We've talked to our president, our provost, and we're moving it forward. So I'm gonna first put a pin in the fact that I want to ask you, for those of you who have thought deep about it, how do you plan to use the resources, you know, as part of this project, you know, even in a broad sense? So I'm just going to give you that so you can think about it for a minute, because we might ask a few. But my next question is one that we don't tend to talk about a lot, which is, you know, the movement to communications and marketing. The question is, we've got all these great ideas, and sometimes people are like, I just didn't even know about that. So if we decided to build out a larger campaign to help other HBCUs that want to do this type of work, who do they listen to? Where do they get their information from? And what recommendations would you make to us as far as making sure more people get access to the things that we will come up with as larger themes related to digital learning infrastructure? I know I just hit you with a bunch of stuff right there, but I'm gonna ask that question again. How do we take the best of these learnings and ensure that other people not only hear them, but that it's something that they can adopt? And I'll just take hands or just come off mute. Either way,
I
whatever
will,
floats your
I will
boat.
start off by saying I get all my best information from CCA. So
Well, thank you, Briggs. But I'll tell you, we get all our best information from institutions. So we don't create any of this stuff. We just catch the folks who are doing it well and amplify it.
Well, Danny, I think an unorthodox, for lack of a better term, way of sharing the information is via the students and social media. You know, if we're doing something here in Mississippi Valley and our students seem to be extremely receptive of it and happy about it, you know, maybe the president at Coppin will say, well, hey, they're doing that at Valley. Why can't we do that here? Especially if the students are excited about it. At the end of the day, we're here to provide services to students, and they are the engine per se that keeps our institution rolling in a certain way, I guess you could say. So I definitely think we have to capitalize on social media. Some people would tell you they don't pay attention to it. You believe that if you want to.
Right. So they need to hear from other members of the community that are actually doing it, whether it be students,
Correct.
peer practitioners, faculty members. So
Correct.
duly noted.
And you can even take advantage of, you know, if somebody attends a conference and wants to make a presentation of how impactful this program has been on their institution. That's another outlet.
Absolutely.
And I would
Shameless plug, but we're doing something like that at South by Southwest in a couple of weeks with a couple of people on this line. Melanie, I see that you got Teresa up first, and then I see somebody else. I think Miss Abigail, Miss Newsom after that. So if we can go in that order.
My only comment was we were saying with unlimited resources, and I think, and back to what you were saying is the potential to grow. We can cooperate and coordinate with other HBCUs to address faculty and staffing issues by growing our own. And I think digital learning is an opportunity to do that.
Got you. Growing internal talent, identifying good talent, and giving them the tools so that they can be those experts and exemplars in the field. Duly noted.
Yes, and I was going to add to Dr. Bailey about the students and social media. And I also think I'm more of a data-driven person, unfortunately. And I think that adding all of that to some case studies and along with data to show that this is, this does make a difference. Let's look at this data point, going to this data point and see how it changes, but having that student face there as well to see that the joy that is brought, the increased awareness and success also is just a highlight.
And if I could chime in as well, I agree with my peers about social media. That's something that VSU actually does pretty good with our social media campaigns. However, another piece of the puzzle is that whole, I guess, camaraderie that comes with conferences. And so I don't know if, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but is there and I'm not aware of a HBCU conference that maybe some of these strategies can actually be shared? I know that personally, when I go to my professional organization conferences, I always take back nuggets that I can apply, and not the virtual conferences per se, but the actual face-to-face conferences where people can really sit down and collaborate one-on-one or in small groups, and then also the sessions to actually show those successful pieces that actually are working across our campuses. Because from our conversations that we've had today and previously, a lot of us at HBCUs, we actually do get it right as far as what we're trying to do. It's just that the resources to support those efforts And then also the knowledge of what works for everyone else. Those seem to be the stumbling blocks.
Tammy, you said a couple of really good things. So when we get together on April 21st in Atlanta, our hope is that we'll be able to kind of start to incorporate like exemplar practices from the folks that are here on this screen. And maybe that can even be, inform our future communities of practice. So one of the things we said we'll be doing is sharing a variety of workshops for people who weren't selected for this project, and they can start to learn from these other individuals. But seems like that needs to be built out a little bit more. I was going to pivot, Melanie, but seems like is there one more person who was trying to get in?
Two more people, Abigail, then Abe.
Okay, and I want to be mindful of time, so I will popcorn these really quick so we can give some final steps and move forward. So Abigail and who else?
Abe.
Got you. Please jump in.
Maybe not Abigail. Abe, go ahead.
Yes, I like to mention of examples of how the state of Oklahoma is doing that. They form an online learning consortium, and from representative of every university, like for example, I'm representative of Langston University in that system. And then each university has a representative. And then they hired one person. I'm saying that because we can do the same thing in HBCU. It has been almost 2 years, but a lot of success came out of that because we get together every month and then discuss about a different technology, different integration, different way the courses is, even how we can introduce different software. They invite them and then they analyze them from different university, we input, and then the result of that disseminate to all the university. But there is one person that get paid, and then the pay comes from all the universities that are member of the consortium. Like for example, Langston University, because I pay for that from my part, $4,000 we pay. But that goes through his salary, that one person, but coordinate all these activities, and then we get a lot of benefit. We have different type of workshop. In the summer, we have different type of training. Therefore, I think this could really bring all the HBCUs together, and then they work together and benefit from each other experience. Because we always are gonna have two groups of students, one that they are great, they are going to law school and medical school and PT and so on. And then one group that they pass, as many of you mentioned, from class to class with deficiency in reading, writing, and math. Therefore, we can work together, but we have to have some type of consortium that bring us all together on every month to hear about the success and the problem of each other.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I think that is a very common theme that we're also capturing. So thank you all for your continued engagement and thoughts. And as we've done previously, what we'll be doing is compiling the notes and sending out summaries for anyone that, on your teams at your institutions who want to hear about what's taking place, and you'll hear more things coming up around next steps. So Melanie, I'm going to turn the floor over to you to close us out. And thank you for going over a couple of minutes with us, Melanie.
And I'll go fast. So just as our next steps, again, please save the date for April 21st through the 22nd in Atlanta, Georgia for our HBCU DLI convening. Please have your team members who are not on the call today to also save that date, but we'll be sending out more information, the registration, travel logistics soon. And we've heard a few topics that have emerged in our conversations with you all and the advisory council members. And so we're identifying topics to have subcommittees work networking during the month of March, since we won't have our convening in March. So please keep an eye out for that. It'll be a time for you all to continue the conversation and engage in a different way. We also might schedule a March meeting to make up for the convening being rescheduled. So just look out for that. If you are available, we ask that you attend, and we'll be sharing that date out pretty soon. I'll also send the webinar recording from our Pillars for Student Success webinar from last week in the event that you were not able to attend. And that's it. If y'all have questions for me, please, y'all all have my email address, cell phone number. Please email, call, or text with any questions. We look forward to seeing you in person soon at our site visits. And so thank you so much, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.